Lore Warrior Solaris. The Great Ones. The roll call of famous mech fighters from Solaris is almost endless. 3 centuries of names still invoke memories and images. On Solaris, a mech pilot can win all the respect and notoriety of a successor house MechWarrior without ever seeing real battle. Fortunes have been won and lost, and those who battle in the arenas live on in the memories of their fans and supporters. The point at which the mech games move from military exercise to sporting event is somewhat hazy. Certainly the first celebrities to come out of Solaris were the Star League gunslingers and their Curitan opponents. Some of the first battles to the death were fought as part of the hidden war between Curitan Ronin and the SLDF warriors. Meanwhile, the holo broadcasts poured money into Freeworld's coffers. Many date the start of the Solaris games with Colonel Daniel Allison's showdown with Ronin Kaneda Fujima. Captain Wilbur Fruz, MechWarrior Amanda Kuzutoyo, and Ronin Trent Latimer all fought duels in the Solaris arenas. It was the institutionalization of the games and the betting system, however, that began the Star tradition. The first open-class hero was, without a doubt, Cabol Hirsch, a native Solarian and worker in the timber industry. He rose to prominence as a pilot of lumber-loading industrial mechs. Early victories in Class 1 arenas in 2808 led to quick advancement, and by 2812, Cabol Hirsch was a genuine superstar, an undefeated open champion, and the darling of his home world. In the end, though, Hirsch's success was his undoing. Allowed to pick and choose matches because of his open status, he began slumming almost immediately upon reaching the peak of his profession. He invariably fought weaker, less skilled opponents, which made his victories come more easily. At first, spectators were bored, then repulsed by the carnage that Hirsch inflicted. Soon he had acquired the nickname Hitman. Hirsch seemed unconcerned, living a fast, decadent lifestyle and squandering his winnings on drugs, women and wagers on other mech matches. His final defeat came in the hands of the second great mech game star, Marco Mogliotti. Considered a strong beginner, Mogliotti had also risen quickly through the ranks. Too quickly, some believed, expecting him to meet an early end of a more experienced fighter. When the brash and seemingly overconfident Mogliotti challenged the champion in public, adding a stinging rebuke of Hirsch's lifestyle, many predicted the end of the young man's promising career. The resulting battle with Mogliotti's outmatched archer meeting Hirsch's top-of-the-line warhammer defied all expectations. Sluggish from the previous night's debaucheries, Hirsch lumbered his mech out and fought in an uninspired fashion, expecting his green young opponent to wither up and die before him. To Hirsch's surprise, then horror, Mogliotti shrugged off the initial attacks and responded with unabated fury, felling the champion's warhammer and pounding away mercilessly. Hirsch was able to eject before his mech was destroyed, but his career was in tatters, and Mogliotti was the new Solaris champion. At a press conference following the fight, Mogliotti and his manager revealed that Hirsch had for some time been sabotaging his opponent's mechs, and only their own vigilance had prevented the same fate from befalling Mogliotti. After police patrols began to comb the city in search of the missing ex-champion, his body was discovered on the banks of the Solaris River, a single bullet through his head. The subsequent investigation never proved whether his death was suicide or a possible gangland execution. Mogliotti proved a worthy champion, retiring undefeated 5 years later. His success and sportsmanlike conduct, he never killed an opponent, became bywords for champions to come. Others followed with varying degrees of success and popularity. Mogliotti's successor, a fiery woman named Andrea Haskell, served as champion for the following year, before dying in the arena in a fight with her bitter rival, Drew Anada, a former mercenary. The line of champions who followed Anada into history is impressive indeed. It includes Francois Droulet, who piloted his damaged stalker to victory over Mark Good's superior Atlas, and Oliver Two-Horse, the only champion to reign non-consecutive years, defeating champion Maki Murahashi in a furious battle to regain the title he had lost a year before. Many tales surround the warriors of Solaris, with both heroes and villains to spare. A leading villain is Norman Bales, who, from 2943 to 2945, invariably left his opponents crippled or dead, until he met his own death in a fight with Hideo Moriyasu, husband of Nona Simpkins, whom Bales had killed in battle the previous year. Among the heroes is one James O'Gordon, who arrived on Solaris a dispossessed survivor of the destruction of his mercenary regiment, O'Gordon's Rifles. Through good luck and skill, he earned enough to reform the Rifles and lead them back to glory in the Inner Sphere. As the games continued down through the decades and the succession wars began to rage across the Innisphere, Solaris champions came to represent the values of their respective native successor houses. In the years just before the Fourth Succession War, a string of champions came and went. After the retirement of longtime champion legend killer Grey Norton, warriors like Philip Capet, Hans Moder, Billy Wolfson, and Peter Armstrong were all major competitors. All were swept aside, however, by the arrival of Justin Xiang, an exile from the Federated Sons fighting under the banner of the Capellan Confederation. Wolfson, Armstrong, Capet, and others fell to Xiang's near fanatical drive against all things Davian, and within a year, the new MechWarrior was generally considered the best on Solaris. Xiang's unprecedented rise was followed by his mysterious disappearance, then reappearance as a confidant and aide to Capellan Chancellor Maximilian Lau. In a tale now well known in the annals of the Innisphere, Xiang was eventually revealed as a Davian double agent who played a major role in House Lau's downfall, eventually ending up with his wife Candace Lau at the head of the tiny St. Ives commonality. His recent tragic death remains a mystery, but many suspect vengeful agents of then-Chancellor Romano Lau. It wasn't until the War of 3039 that another MechWarrior gained fame comparable to Xiang or Hirsch, Amanda Hamilton, a down-on-her-luck former mercenary, arriving on Solaris with a somewhat battered stalker and driving ambition. By 3045, Hamilton had defeated 24 opponents, and many believed that the great Solaris champions finally had a worthy successor. Hamilton's unexpected retirement in 3046 and her subsequent disappearance left fans in shock and a gaping hole in the world of the games. By the time of the clan invasion, another name had replaced Hamilton's in the hearts of aficionados, a name borne by not but one, but two people. Elizabeth and Tanya O'Bannon, sisters from Kentares IV. They burst onto the scene in 3046, working their way up through Class 1 and 2 arenas. The O'Bannons seemed unstoppable. Many critics attacked the pair when the truth about their background came out. Though their official publicity claimed them to be simple farm girls who made good, the pair were actually former Federated Commonwealth warriors who had clearly outclassed their opponents. The furore over this apparent deception led to abandonment of the old mech versus mech betting system and the institution of a more sophisticated odds procedure. The sisters weathered the storm of controversy, and by 3050 were co-champions of the open class circuit. The days of the frenzy that accompanied the clan invasion were good for the O'Bannons, and by the time the hysteria subsided in 3053, the sisters were rich beyond belief, with respective records of 28-4 for Elizabeth and 26-3 for Tanya. The sisters' fights are fewer these days, and there is talk of their retirement to start their own mech stable. The Legends. In the nearly 250 years since the Solaris games began, only 13 MechWarriors have served as champion for 4 or more years. Of these, 2 were champions for 5 years, and only a single MechWarrior, the legendary Grey Norton, the Legend Killer, served for an unbelievable 7. These are the true legends of Solaris, unquestionably among the finest warriors ever to pilot mechs. Their stories have been passed down through countless retellings and will live on into the future. With passing time, it becomes more difficult to separate fact from fiction, but the following notes are reasonably close to historical truth. Cabol Hirsch, 2812 to 2814. The Hitman, as he was called by contemporaries, was the first real Solaris champion. Acclaimed throughout the Lyran Commonwealth and beyond, Hirsch became his own worst enemy, eventually believing the praise and adoration that surrounded him. Reluctant to give up the fame and fortune of a Solaris champion, he and his technical crew turned cheat, choosing inexperienced warriors as opponents, then sabotaging their mechs. In the end, a pathetic wastrel, Hirsch was exposed as a fraud and died from a gunshot to the head. Marco Magliotti, 2815 to 2818. Hirsch's replacement served as the model for gallant and honourable mech combat for centuries to come. Magliotti combined a fierce competitiveness with a deep reverence for battle mechs and their pilots, sponsoring several new warriors, donating heavily to charity, and treating all of his opponents with an impeccable sense of sportsmanship. Unlike Hirsch, who seemed to derive a perverse pleasure from making his opponents suffer, Magliotti never inflicted more damage than necessary, and retired with honours in 2818. Today, a bequest from Magliotti continues to fund an annual scholarship to the Lyran Commonwealth's prestigious Nagelring Military Academy. Kasai Lusang, 2832 to 2835. The next 4-year champion was a quiet, introverted man who kept to himself when not in combat. A former mercenary noted for his methodical and intellectual approach to strategy, Xiang was equally systematic in arena combat, thoughtfully approaching each battle and gearing his tactics to his opponent's strengths and weaknesses. His style of fighting prevailed for 4 years, failing him only at the end when he was unseated by a relative unknown, Tetsuo Kanawa, whose strength lay in his unpredictability. Xiang retired after this defeat, living out the rest of his days on a country estate in southern Greyland. Oliver Two Horse, 2837 to 2838, and then again 2840 to 2841. A mech warrior who rose through the ranks, Two Horse began as a humble loader mech pilot who would eventually unseat Tetsuo Kanawa as champion. His defeat 2 years later seemed to end Two Horse's career, but the canny champion wasn't finished. Deprived of stable backing, he staked his fortune on a new mech and returned in 2040, retaking his title in a furious battle. His death in combat the following year did little to diminish Two Horse's legend. In many ways it enhanced it. To date, no other mech warrior has served non-consecutive years as champion. Paul Fokker, 2870 to 2874. Generally considered the best until the meteoric rise of Grey Norton, Paul Fokker piloted his Stalker to no less than 5 consecutive championships before retiring undefeated in 2874. Dashing, outgoing and handsome, Fokker was plagued throughout his career with ugly rumours about his private life, as well as a spate of paternity suits and a legion of women claiming to be jilted lovers. Though his non-arena exploits were sensational, Fokker was a consummate mech warrior, equally at home in a spindly locust as in his hulking Stalker. Instructors at leading military academies throughout the Hemisphere studied his combat techniques, with the result that many modern mech tactics are direct descendants of Paul Fokker's innovations. Harrison Kent, 2881 to 2884. A loud, flamboyant braggart with a sense of fancy clothing, fast women, and high living, Harrison Kent managed to offend nearly everyone on Solaris during his rise to the top, and by the time his rise ended in 2884, few were sorry to see him go. Winning through his unpredictable tactics and an unerring sense of his opponent's strengths and weaknesses, Kent continually proclaimed his greatness, even going so far as to predict exactly which of his enemy's mech areas he would damage and at what point his opponent would be forced to eject. Such antics attracted widespread attention, but Kent overstepped his bounds in 2884, failing to note that his opponent was piloting a heavily modified mech that didn't behave in the expected manner. Sticking doggedly to his pre-fight predictions, Kent launched poorly conceived attacks and found himself on the ropes almost immediately. When he finally ejected, fans were relieved, confident that they were finally free of Harrison Kent's buffoonery. They were wrong. After announcing his retirement, he went on to become host of the long-running Harrison Kent Report, a popular weekly tri-vid talk show in which he harangued about various aspects of mech combat, politics, or contemporary issues, or mercilessly attacked his guests, who continued to appear despite his fearsome reputation. Kent's death on the air in 2891 drew huge ratings, leading some to speculate that continued popularity would cause him to rise from the dead in order to further antagonize the Solarian populace. Paul Reese, 2895 to 2898. Pretty Paul is still remembered as the most handsome and stylish mech champion ever to grace the arenas. After his initial victories and subsequent appearances dressed in the height of fashion with a succession of beautiful women on his arm, Reese swiftly moved from simply wearing fashion to setting them. A leader in dress and attitude as he was in the mech arena, when Reese wore a certain shirt or jacket, it was only a matter of days, sometimes even hours, before every trendy male on Solaris was wearing something similar. For 4 spectacular years, Paul Reese was the man whom every Solaran male wanted to be. All of this obscures the fact that Reese was a brilliant, if somewhat unsubtle, mech warrior, with a tendency toward foolhardiness, who was only successful because of his incredible luck. He remained in competition for several years after his defeat in 2898, but then faded from the scene, eventually dying alone and broke in a filthy cafe apartment amid a few tattered souvenirs of his former glory. Kan Shou, 2911 to 2915. Quiet, confident, and in public, amazingly arrogant, Kan Shou dominated the arena for 5 years, one of only 2 mech warriors to do so. Piloting his battle master, which he named Kuan Yin after the Chinese goddess of mercy, Kan was anything but merciful, ruthlessly exploiting his opponent's smallest weaknesses and doing anything necessary for victory, even if it meant the death of his opponent. Kan was a complex character. far more so than the ruthless warrior of his public image. Those who knew him will say that in private he was a kind, soft-spoken man with impeccable taste in art, architecture, and fashion. When he approached a mech arena, however, any shred of kindness or sensitivity vanished, and he became a silent, brutal killer. Many biographies have probed the mystery of Khan's show, but few have provided satisfactory answers to the troubling enigma of his life. He retired undefeated, living out his last decade in virtual seclusion. Speculation existed that his death in 2927 was a suicide, but his body was cremated, and no further facts were forthcoming. Maya Balaji. Balaji, widely considered the best medium mech fighter on Solaris, Class 3 champion for 5 years straight, went on to greater heights in 2918 when he won the Unlimited Class Championship in his first year of competition. Balaji's career was full of such surprises, and luck, it was invariably on his side. Nearly beaten in the 2920 championship match by an up-and-coming mech warrior named Thar Drickle, who went on to become champion in 2924, Balaji survived and emerged victorious when his opponent's mech struck a mine and stumbled at a crucial moment, giving Balaji a chance to strike its unarmoured back. Luck followed him throughout his career. For his part, Balaji never seemed to lose the wide-eyed wonder and boyish innocence that many fans, particularly females, found appealing. Finally, in 2921, realising that even the best of luck had limits, Balaji retired to his home district of Donegal, there to find a chain of fast food restaurants. He died in 2967. Rhiann Castleton, 2928 to 2931. During her lifetime, Castleton was a woman of some mystery, appearing unexpectedly on the scene and immediately making a name for herself in Class 1 and 2 circuits. By 2925, she acquired a first-class ride with White Hand Stables and was fighting her way to prominence as a Class 5 pilot. Her 4 years of champion were uneventful, with Castleton disposing of opponents with cool professionalism and sports-like conduct. Defeated in 2931, Castleton soon vanished from the scene, but the truth about her background and the origin didn't come out until 8 years later. Under her real name of Shanda McConnell, she'd been banned from the arena due to allegations of fraud and cheating. After extensive plastic surgery and a reasonable lapse of time, she returned with a new identity, determined to reclaim what she believed was her due. As for the truth of the original allegations, most believe that she'd been unjustly accused and framed by rivals, but no one knows for certain, even to this day. Terry Bates, 3002 to 3005. A small, attractive woman with a quick wit, Bates was the last individual one might expect to be piloting a 100-ton Atlas. The antithesis of the hulking, muscular mech warrior of fiction and popular imagination, Bates was nonetheless a fierce competitor, winning match after match with only an occasional setback. Her shining moment came in 3002, when she unseated defending champion Hans Schlenenig in the jungle, in a fight whose odds heavily favoured her opponent. Weary of arrogant, self-centered mech warriors and meaningless cults of personality, the public immediately embraced Bates, who won fans with her unassuming, modest demeanour. 4 years of champion followed until an injury forced her retirement in 3005. Although she recovered fully, she never returned to the arena. James O'Gordon, 3009 to 3012. When O'Gordon's Rifles, a leading mercenary regiment, was defeated and scattered in 3007, few believed the unit would ever return, but these observers failed to reckon with the Rifles' irascible leader, the legendary James O'Gordon. Starting with a single serviceable mech known only as Battlemaster No. 1, O'Gordon travelled to Solaris, receiving the backing of the War Dogs Mech Cooperative, and ascending to championship-level competition in short order. Though defeated in 3008 by Van Daravivan, O'Gordon fought his way to victory the following year, reaping huge returns on long-shot odds and funneling all profits into the War Dogs and his dream of reforming the regiment. Over the next few years, O'Gordon continued to fight successfully, shunning the sponsorship of established stables who fought back brutally. Badly beaten by thugs in 3011, O'Gordon nonetheless went on to defeat his opponent in the finals, becoming champion for the 3rd year in a row. After his final victory in 3012, O'Gordon announced his retirement, adding that O'Gordon's Rifles had returned as a battalion-sized mercenary unit, incorporating personnel from the old regiment and his comrades from the War Dogs Cooperative. The Rifles subsequently returned to their winning ways, reaching regimental strength within a few years, continuing today under O'Gordon's grandson. Grey Norton, 3016 to 3022. Only one mech warrior can claim to have been champion for a full 7 years running. In almost 250 years of conflict, only the legend killer, Grey Norton, has remained at the pinnacle for so long. Arriving on Solaris VII as a stowaway, Norton began with a minor Class 1 stable, swiftly rising through the ranks, but avoiding the brutal competition of the unlimited class, despite numerous offers at the time. At age 25, he left Solaris to fight as a mercenary. When he returned 5 years later in 3015 with a brand new rifleman, he announced his intention to compete in Class 5 arenas. Even some ardent supporters of Norton expressed skepticism at his ability to compete in the assault mech circuit in so undistinguished a vehicle as a rifleman. Initial successes silenced these doubters, everyone wondering how a 65-ton mech would manage to overcome such awesome opponents as Battlemasters and Stalkers. Meanwhile, Norton won victory after victory. His success continued more than 7 years. One warrior after another fell to the aptly nicknamed Legend Killer, and until he retired in 3022, he seemed unbeatable. Rumours would swirl around him after retirement, hinting that in addition to his modest import-export business, he dabbled in espionage and the occasional assassination. More questions surrounded his death in 3027, which to this day remains unsolved. Also unsolved was the secret of his surprising success. His rifleman was obviously outmatched in the unlimited class, but carried him to success nonetheless. One theory, advanced in the years since the arrival of the clans and the rediscovery of Star League Lost Tech, suggests that while operating as a mercenary in the periphery, he stumbled upon a Star League-era rifleman equipped with such advances as pulse lasers, ultra-autocannons, endo-steel frame, XL engines, double heatsinks, and so forth. In addition, some evidence exists that Norton's mech had weighed considerably more than 65 tons, and had been upgraded to 80 or maybe 90 tons in a fashion similar to that of the Marauder II, with extra armour added to the legs and arms. These are only a few of the mysteries of Grey Norton's life and death, but none can obscure the fact that he was unquestionably the finest mech warrior ever to fight in the arenas of Solaris VII. Amanda Hamilton, 3040 to 3043. The last 4-year champion of Solaris, Hamilton was a former mercenary who quickly rose to the top, easily defending her title against a wide range of opponents. Surprisingly little solid information exists on her, and she herself isn't talking, having retired in 3043 and disappearing altogether 3 years later. Numerous individuals throughout the Ionosphere claim to have seen Hamilton over the last 10 years, but none of these reports can be substantiated.